It froze. Your water never freezes.
A little early.
Yeah. I guess you saw the airplane out front, the F-89. It looks pretty good. It's just too bad we don't have room to put it inside. But we will. Give us 6-8 months, we'll have room to put it inside. Guaranteed. We'll have the B-24 finished too, guaranteed, huh? You believe that? Yeah, I just hope we live long enough to see the B-24 finished.
Speak for yourself, John.
But we're glad you came, and we're happy to have Mr. Morrison here to talk about the South Pole and some of his experiences. You know, we had Bob Arnold here a couple of years ago who talked about his experiences at the North Pole. And so I guess you could say we go to the end of the earth to find speakers. Maybe we ought to get them here together and have them compare. But Jim, the hour's yours. Just do what you want to do.
Thank you very much. So I don't stand in the middle. I would like to ask for a brave volunteer to click. If there's anybody interested, would you want to do that? And not yet. I'll let you know when to click that. You've used the mouse before, haven't you? Those smart kids. Left click. So, in a minute. My name is Jim Morrison. I've been in aviation for over 30 years.
Jim, use the mic.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My name is Jim Morrison, and I have been in aviation for over 30 years now, and it's been an absolute blur for me. And I'm sure anybody who's been in aviation can relate to that. Go ahead and click it once there to see what happens. I thought I'd give some history, some background first with myself. I went to Antarctica as a first off, I went to boot camp, and it was during the time of Vietnam, and I thought, you know, it was a quick 7-week boot camp, and I thought for sure I was heading to Vietnam. And ended up in the most peaceful squadron in the whole U.S. Navy. They didn't even know the 45. And I was just out of sheer luck. I went to a quick 7-week boot camp, and then the guys go, you know where you're going? I go, no, we're going to Antarctica. They couldn't convince me. We'll move on. Go ahead and click it again. Some history about Antarctica. I'm going to move this around just a little bit so I can see it some here. VXE-6 is the name of the squadron, Antarctic Deveron Squadron 6. Had its roots in Operation High Jump. It was the 4th Antarctic expedition conducted by Rear Admiral Byrd at the time. So it goes back quite some time. Click it again, please. In December 46, this expedition involving sea-based Martins and land-based R-4Ds set out to conduct an extensive aerial survey of Antarctica. You wonder why. When you spend time down there, what could possibly be worth going down to Antarctica? They did a lot of exploration down there, a lot of fascinating history down there. Next one, please. You're doing a great job. They eventually mapped about 1.5 million square miles of the interior and 5,500 miles of the coastline. So they were pretty active down there quite early in, like I said, 1946. Next one, please. A little bit of history continuing on. Click it again, please. That was an old squadron patch that wasn't politically correct back then. As you can see, they've changed that since. But puckered feet, holding a bottle, and looked like a drunk penguin there. They didn't think that was politically correct, so they have a different squadron patch when shortly after I went in. Another click, please. Established as Air Development Squadron 6, VX-6, at Naval Air Station Paxton River in Maryland in 17 January 55. So that's where the squadron actually started, in 1955. Next one, please. The mission was to conduct operations in support of the U.S. Department of Defense, responsibilities in connection with the United States Antarctic Program. Next one, please. Following the return from Deep Freeze 1 in February 56, VX-6 was relocated to NAS Quonset Point, Rhode Island. When I joined the squadron in 74, they had just moved in 73 from Quonset Point to Point Mugu, California, when I checked in. Next one, I'm sorry, I was hoping that would come out a little clear. There's a whole bunch of penguins down there moving around. Next one, please. It was interesting to note this a CB squadron, Navy Seabees. It was established just to help the Antarctic program. So they established Construction Battalion 200, which had been formed to do the construction of the facilities in Antarctica. And let me tell you, they did a lot more than that. They also groomed the ice runway and the skiway down in Antarctica. They were a pretty integral part. They also took care of the heaters and things like that. There was, CBs over all the trades, construction trades. Next one, please. VX-6 made its first deployment in Deep Freeze 1 in November '55 as part of Task Force 43. Next one. The first season, VX-6 completed 9 long-range exploratory flights and transported people and materials necessary for the construction of Little American Base Camp, a naval ops facility on Hut Point, Ross Island, where we do base still today. Ross Island is where McMurdo is actually at. And South Pole Station, and assisted the location of 4 other bases on the continent. They were pretty busy in the very first deep freeze. I was impressed with the amount that they got done with the equipment they had then. Next one, please. A little more history I'm going to give you. Next. The designation for the deep freeze would change in 1960 to represent the year. So again, it would be deep freeze 60 would be 1960. Next. In January '69, VX-6 was redesignated to Antarctic Development Squadron 6, VXE-6. Next one. Since its establishment, VX-6 has transported more than 200,000 flight hours in direct support of the United States interest in Antarctica, and probably more since. It's taken over by a civilian operator down there now. Like the helicopters are flown by ERA Aviation. I don't know if you've heard of ERA before. They do all the helicopter work. And I understand that the folks up in Schenectady, New York, that had a Herc Squadron outfit up there, the Air Force Guard unit is still actively, they took over our aircraft, and I think they're using them. Next one, please. They transported more than 195,000 passengers, 240 million pounds of cargo, and nearly 10 million gallons of fuel to numerous sites. You're going, well, how do they move so much of this stuff? What they did is, down at McMurdo, there is temporary ice and permanent ice. The temporary ice breaks away every year, and when you're down there, that is a real eerie sound. You can actually hear it creaking and breaking away down there on Willie Field where I was staying. And what didn't break away, the Coast Guard would bring their icebreakers down and excuse me, and break it away. Getting all choked up talking about this now. But the Coast Guard would come down there with their icebreakers and break away the ice so they could bring in the supply ships to McMurdo. And then what they did is they offloaded the ships. Then we got extremely busy. That's when we hauled the cargo all over the continent of Antarctica. The supply ships would bring in, there would be a tanker would come in and bring DFA or heating fuel, if you will. And then we would haul that. We would convert the back of the C-130 at a huge fuselage tank. I'm going to say around 1,500 to maybe 2,000 gallons. And we converted the C-130, we put in all the plumbing, put in the tank, then started hauling fuel to all the places. Saipo, Antarctica, South Pole. I think he made trips to Vostok, the Russian station down there, but went all over the place. Next one, please. There's some Antarctic firsts, and there are numerous. If you clicked on Google and brought up VXE-6, there are several websites that address this old squadron that has been decommissioned now. But please check out that site. There are several firsts, and I'm just going to list a few of them. Oh, and something I wanted to point out. You see the JATO assisted takeoff here? We're going to be talking about that. JATO took out several of our aircraft. and we'll see pictures about that later. But that's a jet assisted takeoff, and when you get, those skis are pretty sticky on they're Teflon coated, but it takes a lot to get that Herc off the ground, and when you're in the open, literally land anywhere with that Herc, and on skis there, and what they did is a lot of times use JATO to help them get them off the ground quicker. Next slide, please. Thank you, you're doing a good job. 20 November 55, two P-2V Neptunes and two RF-5D Skymasters forged their first air link with the continent of Antarctica with a flight from Christchurch, New Zealand to McMurdo Sound. Next one. 31 October 56, an R-4D Dakota became the first plane to land at the South Geographic Pole, the actual South Pole. We used to call it the top of the world's bottom. Did you know, another piece of trivia, that the South Pole is 9,000 feet in elevation? And so we used to call it the top of the world's bottom. Pretty high. Next one, please. 9 April 61, first midwinter fly-in was accomplished to rescue a seriously injured, ill Russian scientist from Byrd Station. Now, I'll tell you what, that's a pretty risky maneuver. We're talking, their summer season typically, let's see, November, maybe late August, start going down, we call wind fly. And it's still, that sun is still going down below the horizon and creeping up and going back down again. It's fun to watch it. It just goes around an elliptical pattern. It never goes up. But that's the time to get off the continent when it goes down that far. But anyway, these wind flies are fly-ins. If you remember, there wasn't that many years ago, there was another one. A lady scientist was seriously ill down there, and they had to go rescue her. And I'll tell you what, it's just a blacked out situation. You're flying in blacked out, and have to go down to Antarctica. It's pretty risky business. Next slide, please. Now, this is quite interesting. I didn't know quite that there were this many aircraft. Some of you may recognize, maybe not, but these were the aircraft utilized since Deep Freeze 1. Now, some of them you may not recognize the numbers, like the HO4S-3. Everybody knows Sikorsky products. We had Sikorsky products. Hillers, had just all kinds of helicopters, and as you can see, just an array of fixed wing. I think, now I remember looking through the books, and I should have made a separate slide of this as well. I think at one period, they had something like 7 different type of aircraft that they were working on. Can you imagine the parts that they would have to maintain 7 types of aircraft? That's just ludicrous. That's the reason why I think they ultimately went into, you see the UH-1N model there, the N model Hueys, the twin engine one. We went to them, and we went to just the C-130. And that made parts certainly a lot easier too. Next slide, please. My tenure with VXE6, 74 to 79. You're looking at beautiful downtown McMurdo. What? It's now my back and a little bit to the 3 o'clock here would be Willie Field. Willie Field was named after a D4 cat operator who actually went down with his cat through the ice. It's shaving the ice or just driving this cat out on the ice, and it went through. So Willie Field was named after him, and that's where we have our skiway. You actually land on wheels. The CBs go out there before we land, before we come in early August. They literally plane the ice, and we can land on wheels. Then the beginning of the season, we're augmented by C-141s. I think even a C-5 had the guts to land on the ice. But it's so thick. That's not an issue, landing on the ice. Till towards the end of the season, when I talked about those icebreakers coming up, when you start seeing penguins and seals sticking their heads through holes, it's time to move off the ice runway and onto the skiway at Willie Field. And then you have to work off the skis for the rest of the season. But beginning of the year, they just land on their wheels, just like you do on any airport. Fascinating stuff. Next one, please. As I mentioned, I did my boot camp at Great Lakes. And next one. And you have to know that the Navy has some pretty sick places to have boot camp. Mine was in Great Lakes. Did anybody do Navy time in Great Lakes? Oh, Don did. I'll tell you what, Don was probably smarter than me. I went in January. And I don't know if you know where Great Lakes is at, but it's right outside of Chicago. You would have thought I would have had more brains than that. A lot of my friends went to San Diego or Pensacola. No, I had to go to Great Lakes, and standing there at attention on the tarmac at 4:30 and dark 30 in the morning, the wind blowing and howling. I'll tell you, and doing push-ups in the snow. God has a sense of humor. I cannot believe this. So after that boot camp, my order said VXE6, Point Mugu, California. I thought, surf and sun, here I come. I couldn't believe it. Prayers answered. And I check into the squadron, and the guy goes, you know where you're going? I go, no, all I knew was a C-130 outfit. I thought, I might be ended up going to Vietnam or something like that. He goes, you're going to Antarctica. I go, yeah, right, you're pulling my leg. He couldn't convince me. And finally, he took me down to the squadron, and there were 7 C-130 ski-equipped C-130s on the ramp. I broke down right there. I cried. I just couldn't believe it. Could not believe it. I thought, who's some senator back there laughing or something. I don't know. But, so anyway, I checked in the squadron, and I'll tell you what, you make friends for your life. Next one. They were, as I said, ski-equipped C-130s. This should be a lot more exclamation marks and other comments there. Next one, please. That first year, I went off to a lot of schools to get trained up for my rate. I was an aviation machinist mate. I took care of the power plants, the engine, the power plant, the propeller, the fuel system, and the GTC or the APU of the C-130. That was what I took care of. Next one, please. Friendships. Something down there. You make friends for life. A lot of them I stood up at weddings for many years later, and you just make friends for life. You learn to depend upon one another and really watch each other's backside. And because down there in Antarctica, you have a buddy system. You have to. We had ropes between buildings. We would call them Herbies, the little whiteouts. Literally just come up that fast, and you could be stuck someplace. We even had supplies on board the aircraft too, in case you were working out in the aircraft. But we would get a whiteout situation just that fast, and so you would have a rope to go from building to building, and always had caches of food in all of our buildings, just in case you got caught in one of these whiteouts. And seriously, you cannot tell the horizon from the ground. I don't know if anybody's been in that situation up in Alaska or anywhere else, but it's eerie. I mean, it is the goofiest thing you've ever seen, and it's kind of scary. You do not want to be out there or you'll just be lost. You will not be able to find your way. So you stay put. You go inside the aircraft, wait it out, or get in one of the buildings or something like that. Just wait it out. Next one, please. Deployments. My first year was in '74, and I don't know if more Navy guys in here, but you usually get stuck in what we call first Louis duty. And that's where you work for the first lieutenant of the squadron, and he's more of what we call a black shoe. He's of regular Navy, and in other words, you're pushing mops and doing stuff like that. But what I did, he said, well, there's an early deployment for guys that want to go and pack sea bags for people that are going to Antarctica. And you pack sea bags in New Zealand. So the guys deploy from Christchurch. They go to Christchurch. They pick up their sea bag, which has got the winter gear. Then you go on down to Antarctica. It's got all the bunny boots, the heavy thermal underwear, and all that stuff. And so I did. I stayed there for about 3 months, and then I went on down to Antarctica. So I packed sea bags for the first 3 months. That was my first Louis duty, and then I went down to Antarctica to work with my MOS, if you will, back into the power plant shop. So I did my time. Next one, please. Deep Freeze 75 was quite an eventful year. That was 1975, and we lost 2 C-130s. Next one, please. Well, they all came in, sorry about that. The squadron, well, ironically, the squadron celebrated 20 years in Antarctica, and I've got a cool cruise book here, if you want to take a look at that. It's 20 years in Antarctica, and what it does, it goes back in history, back to 1955, and it discussed all the different types of aircraft that were used in this period of time. Absolutely wonderful cruise book, and I got 2 others of different years there as well. But take a look at that. January 15th, 75, 2 LC-130s, 319 and 129, crashed Dome Charlie, about 700 miles from McMurdo. The interesting part about Dome Charlie, it's got some of the thickest ice on the Earth, and that's why the scientists were interested about this. You're going, oh, let me back up a little bit. Our job in life was to haul scientists and cargo all over the continent. Everywhere. That's what our job was, to support the National Science Foundation, NSF. That's who paid our bill. Dome Charlie was one place they were interested in, and it was a high elevation, 14,600 feet was where this place was at. You don't shut down the engines. Just like at Dome, at the South Pole, we never shut down the engines. It's just too hard to get them started at that elevation at 9,000 feet. At 14.6, where we let them off, we didn't shut them down either. You know, you kick them out, kick the cargo out and say, have a good day, and you go fly off. Well, this was the first one to take off. And when it took off, you saw those JATO bottles on the back of that Herc. One of the JATO bottles broke off. The mounts were made for fore and aft stress. You know, imagine the thrust. They weren't made for that hard bouncing on the skis. And one broke off and also exploded. And pieces of shrapnel went into the engine caught fire, caught the wing on fire, and it burned off the wing. That JATO bottle it just kept on going. There's pieces going everywhere. The next aircraft right behind it, so they sent a SAR aircraft, they sent the next aircraft to go out to rescue the crew of this one. On takeoff, with this crew on board, it's sitting there and it's taking off, just going and going and going. You understand when you go at that high elevation, 3 pilots are in here too, you know you got to have a lot of runway for 14.6. Plus you're on skis. So you're just screaming down the runway and just the nose is going like this. And it comes up once and the front struts break. The ski droops and it folds up into the fuselage next time the nose comes down. And it comes to an abrupt halt. The skin of the fuselage is wrinkled, just severely. It's a pretty ugly scene. Now we got 2 crews sitting there, and they launch a 3rd ship to go there. The 3rd ship, well, they got smart about this. They get that nose off as quickly as they possibly can to keep it from getting beaten, and they do get off the ground eventually with the other 2 crews. Next slide, please. One more time. And a 3rd C-130 succumbs to the JATO bottle as well. On November 75, as a part, now this of course is part of Deep Freeze 76, because in November we start another deployment, so that's going into the next year. And it also becomes the first C-130 to be salvaged in Antarctica. It flew out in December of 75, and I was fortunate to be a part of that crew. We did a phenomenal job. What people thought it would take close to 30 days, we did in 4 days. What people don't understand outside the continent is that when you're down there, you kind of work as fast as you can. You don't want to stay down there any longer than you have to. But my counterparts and I, not to toot the horn or anything, but that was one of the sharper mechs out there, and that's why they sent me to this remote place. And we changed engines out there, and so out there in Antarctica, and there's a beautiful picture of a Herc out there on the sidewall there too. But down in Antarctica, we did everything out in the environment. There's no hangars for C-130s in Antarctica. I got quite used to working in the environment, and I saw some miserable times. The coldest I saw it happened to be at Dome Charlie, and I think it was when I was doing this one. It was 70 below without the chill factor. That was the only time I got frostbite, right here on the end of my nose. That was the other thing we had a buddy system for. You always check each other, make sure everybody's okay. Wait a minute, Jim, you're not moving. You need to go inside and thaw out for a while. But it was pretty miserable there. We had a couple of storms come through, and at that elevation and everything, I would see, what we did first is we went first to the South Pole. You know, you've heard about being acclimated. There's some other terms for that as well. It's just slipped my mind right now. But we first went to South Pole and spent 3 days there to get acclimated our lungs to the high elevation before we went on to Dome Charlie to do the repairs. Well, I thought, this is a bunch of crap. I can do this. And I started pulling these banana sleds. At the physical South Pole, there's one of these huge geodesic domes, right? And so I took one of these banana sleds and started hauling it up to the top of the dome and sliding it down. I was having a blast. I thought, oh, this is easy, this acclimated stuff. I'll tell you what, that night, I was sick as a dog. Now I know what altitude sickness is. My gyro was messed up. If you ever had your gyro messed up, it is a bad thing. All you can do is lie in bed and you're like you're drunk all the time or something. It is just, your head hurts and you're sick. You're down for the count. And so I had to stay an additional day. The squadron wasn't real happy with me. Jim, you were supposed to take it slow. Well, I didn't listen. But anyway, when I stayed an additional day, everybody waited for me to get better. Then we went to Dome Charlie and did the salvage operations to the first one. The first one, the reason why we started on the third aircraft first is it had minimal damage. The JATO bottle broke off again, glanced off between the fuselage and number 3 engine right off the wing where the fuel cell's at. Fortunately, it didn't puncture the skin. Went through the propeller. Pieces of the propeller went through the fuselage, missed people that were sitting on both sides. I mean, the piece of the propeller came through and just missed everybody. And then it glanced off right behind the co-pilot's head. Just missed that last glass right here. You can see that hurt, but that last glass right here, it glanced off the skin and just kept rocketing on. But they stopped that one. Another one down. But like I said, it took only 4 days to repair change the engine propeller. We had to do some electrical wiring where the propeller went through the fuselage and cut the wires going through. Absolutely fascinating. Great guys out there I worked with, and we had a great time. Next slide, please. How many have heard of Erebus? Mount Erebus down there in Antarctica? That is literally right beside. You're looking at McMurdo. McMurdo would be over here, and Erebus right here is an active volcano, and it just puffs out a little bit of smoke down there. And I haven't seen anything too exciting, but you might remember